Today, we're going to discover what the whole-of-life cost of a community asset actually is and how you can positively impact your organisation's bottom line through fibre-reinforced polymer structures. Good morning and welcome to our webinar on the total cost of ownership. I'm Kelly Stewart, Marketing Manager at Wagners CFT, and I'm here with today's guest speaker, Whitsunday's Regional Council, Manager of Capital Programs, Michael Downing. Michael is a chartered professional engineer with more than 6 years main contractor experience in roads, rail and highway maintenance throughout the United Kingdom, and an additional 11 years of civil and structural consultancy together with local government experience in Australia. Michael has extensive expertise in earthworks, roads, drainage, services, structures, piling, setting out and surveying, and oversees teams of project managers, designers and construction crews, guiding them through contract administration and a new project management framework to achieve delivery of Whitsunday Regional Council's capital budget. I also welcome Wagners CFT General Manager for Australia and New Zealand, Ryan Leeson, who will be facilitating today's Q&A session. Welcome both Michael and Ryan. Before we get started, just a few webinar protocols. We are recording today's event and we'll make the recording public via the Wagners CFT YouTube channel. You can ask a question anytime you like during the webinar via the chat bubble at the top of the screen. However, we will hold your question over until the end of the webinar for the Q&A session. And for anybody having difficulties using that chat facility, I've just popped my mobile phone number in there now, and you can send your questions through to my mobile phone if you can't get the chat facility working for you. All right, so what is the total cost of ownership? Well, as a mathematical equation, it is I plus M minus R. I being the initial costs of planning, purchasing and installing a structure, M for the lifetime maintenance on the structure, and R representing the retirement costs of the structure at the end of its serviceable life. So total cost of ownership or whole of life costs is not just the initial purchase price. And the reason why people use TCO is because it gives you a far more accurate basis for evaluating the real cost of a structure over its entire lifetime, not just at the time of purchase. So how does FRP stack up against the scrutiny of TCO? Well, fibre-reinforced polymer usually outperforms more traditional materials because of its reduced maintenance, improved inspection cycles and replacement requirements. So let's have a really quick look at a TCO done by Cairns Regional Council for the Katana Wetland Boardwalk project. If you look at the second column titled Capital Costs, the steel structure at the top of the list had an initial cost of $696,900. The hardwood superstructure had an initial cost of $656,000, and the FRP superstructure 883,000. Now, if you were going to make a decision on what material to go with based on your initial costs, you'd probably go with the hardwood option, which I've highlighted in green, because it has the cheapest initial cost. But let's have a look at the maintenance requirements of that hardwood structure in the first 10 years, which is estimated at 285,000, highlighted in yellow. And if you add, then from 11 to 30 years, which is another 556,000 as forecast by Cairns Regional Council, and then 31 to 50 years, an additional 659,000. And if you add all of that up, you get the fourth column titled 50-year whole of life cost, which for the hardwood timber structure turned out to be the most expensive of the three original options at more than $2 million, which I've highlighted there in red text. So factoring in the total cost of ownership and comparing steel, hardwood and FRP, the FRP actually outperformed all others in this scenario at 1.2 million, which I've circled there in red. So Cairns Regional Council actually forecast a saving of more than $1.1 million in maintenance costs over the lifetime of Katana Boardwalk by looking at the total cost of ownership and selecting FRP despite it being more expensive initially. Now I'm going to hand you over to Michael Downing to find out more about Whitsunday Regional Council's experience with looking at the total cost of ownership of a structure and their use of FRP. Michael.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully that's showing up. Right, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Here to talk about our experiences here in the Whitsundays. So just a little bit about myself, a bit more than what Kelly provided you with. So I'm a civil engineer, born and bred in Birmingham in England. I've got a couple of degrees, a BEng and an MEng Prac. RPQ and CPeng. My background really comes from, I've done a bit of everything as far as contractor in the UK, mainly on the civil and rail, a couple of large jobs there. Birmingham New Street was the one I left before moving here. I was fortunate to get a position in Mackay with a civil and structural consultancy and worked there from 2012 to 2016. Which is where I ended up coming to Whitsunday Regional Council. I've had a couple of roles here, but generally always been involved in the delivery of projects. Right now, I sit in the manager of the capital program position. We've got around, well, as of this morning, once council meeting occurs, $107 million program for 24-25, and the next couple of years are going to be quite significant also. So for the size of our council, that's large. So we've got a team of 22, small design and survey team, 2 delivery teams in the north and the south, a number of support officers and project managers to help us deliver those projects. We're also going through we had a restructure about a year ago. We're just working through a framework that's been implemented, and that's really the projects we're going to talk about here. Some of them are going to really show how that's influenced our position. So one of the reasons I'm speaking to you today is we've had quite a bit of experience with FRP in the Whitsundays going back to around 2018. I know the products have been around for longer than that, but there's not all that many in Queensland or Australia that have been, getting 6, 7, 8 years of experience with them. We've got a number of bridges in the region. Started off in Jubilee Pocket with a couple of 13 metres, a 17-metre bridge. Quite a few of these have been installed by a local supplier, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a short while. We have now got bridges in every single area of our council. We've got 4 distinct areas, Airlie, that most people know us for. Crossbar just inland is very much tropic still, but more cane based. You've got Bowen up in the north region, that's more of a drier tropics, and then you've got Collinsville out in the west, which is very dry. All of those areas have got some FRP in them, and so we've got a good bit of knowledge from each of our depots of the bottom line, what affects us going forward. One thing to note, that image just on the bottom right, where there's the one green bridge, we believe, or Wagners and ourselves believe, Currently, it's the longest riveted FRP bridge in Australia, if not the world. And until someone proves us otherwise, we're sticking with that. And another question we had, I was fortunate to have a tour of the factory in Toowoomba, is why have we got the brown? I believe it's called by Ryan and his team the Airlie brown. And simply that comes down to trying to maintain a timber look. When we first implemented some of these structures, the timber was it was a big theme back probably 20 years ago, and going away from that got a bit of negative public reaction. So we stuck with something very similar, and pretty much all of our structures have followed that Airlie brown colour. So we're currently sticking with it because it's very popular in the region actually. So we're happy with it. That leads us on to one of the ones we'll talk a bit more about is boardwalks. We've got some timber boardwalks that have been replaced by FRP structures in the past years, and we've also got a large deck in Airlie near the lagoon and a number of fences and handrails. So we've got quite a selection of products around the place. The one project we're going to focus on a little bit today is the bicentennial boardwalks in Airlie Beach. They're very iconic for our region. If pretty much anyone comes to visit, it's almost certain you might well take a walk along here. It follows the foreshore from Cannonvale, which is actually the more populated area. Airlie Beach is actually a small part of our region. It's just very popular with the tourists. So the map on the right shows you a very crudely drawn few sections. These are generally built around 2004 to 2008 to connect up that bicentennial walkway, which has been around since around the late 80s. And it was timber construction and stainless threaded rod and stirrups basically bolted into bedrock for the vast majority of it. 530 meters overall and generally 1.8 to 2 meters wide. So, as I said, an iconic asset for the region. But what were the issues? What were the problems we were finding? So, a lot of this timber was installed around that time, not just on these boardwalks, but other assets around the place. And what we're finding compared to Cairns example given by Kelly is we're spending quite a lot more than what they were estimating there. You can see that the picture on the top right pretty much indicates some of the boards which have more recently been replaced versus the older ones, and they would not have been the original. The story of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, or where I'm from, the Forth Bridge in Scotland, is you get to the end of painting it and you go back to the start and start again. That's pretty much where we were at with our boardwalks, in that we had 2 full-time staff constantly going through our timber structures and carrying out maintenance, and whether that was just repairs, oiling, or actually starting to replace a lot of those boards and some of the more structural members going forward. So we estimated our costs at around 150 grand in labour, and then 25 grand roughly in materials per year. And as time has gone on, things are going up in price. So the structures themselves, they're great. They serve a great purpose, but the problems as asset managers were starting to increase with the use. So what we did, we went out to contract, having gathered all this information, we went out to contract looking to replace those 3 sections of boardwalk. Currently, we have 2 of the stages complete. We were fortunate in that one of the local contractors, PW Landscapes, changing name, they are, I would consider them experts in this product. They've installed it in a lot of regions, and they actually get calls from the likes of Wagners to come outside of the Whitsundays to help out on projects where, say, Wagners might be the principal contractor or something. So they were perfectly positioned to look at this and put a tender forward. What we did as well with that tender, and it's probably a question I'm sure a lot of councils are interested in, is how did we put that to the market? So we essentially just said we don't want a timber structure. We wanted to widen it because we were getting a lot more use, particularly your e-scooters and the like. So we couldn't be too specific in the material. However, every tender came back using some form of an FRP material. So you could tell the market has gone that way naturally because it's such a good product. So we ended up with a contract for all 3 stages. Currently completed 2, hoping to get some funding from our council in the next financial year for the last one. To this point, we've spent around 2.9 million, and we've been lucky to put some of that COVID funding towards it for about 1.85 million. What that really has put back into us is those structures are going to be paying themselves off by taking out the ongoing maintenance and materials in less than 10 years. I mean, 6 to 10, depending on how you look at it. And with a 100-year design life, that is such a great result for our ratepayers, and obviously for the users, not just the locals, but the tourists and everyone who comes to the region. So they've been an amazing result. A lot of issues with our first stage because it was between a marina and a resort. So the detour was a challenge, and the guys, they managed to knock it out within about 6 weeks. The second section was a lot longer, took about 13 weeks, but they really hammered those out quickly and kept the locals happy. Another positive is all of that hardwood that came out of there that was at least reusable, we've been able to store and keep for the final stage or other assets around the town. We've done our best to recycle wherever we can. Then I suppose what comes after that is what a lot of people are wondering. So with 6-7 years worth of experience with these assets, I've spoken to all of our coordinators and asset inspectors, and fortunately they're guys who've been around for a long time. They haven't changed roles, so they've got the knowledge. And typically if you ask, what do you know about this road, this drainage, this pathway, you always get a number of problems, historical issues that haven't been able to be finalized, or they're part of a future bid or something like that. With the FRP structures, they could not give me anything at all. Very minor little things that we can see. So the picture in the top right, we've had a little bit of the paint flaking, but really that's, I believe the paint process has improved. I'm sure Ryan can touch on that if needed, but that was only that one particular asset around the Cannibal Lakes. Very highly used, and a lot of kids around there who are probably doing silly things. So we've tried touching it up. Touch-up paint doesn't look amazing. So we know it's not really affecting that structure massively. So a little bit of paint flaking here and there. We've had a few other random CRMs or customer requests, however you name them. The picture in the bottom right, adding light shrouds so we're not causing nuisance to nearby people. Asking to put bins and signage here and there, but really they're operational matters. So as far as an actual asset, a product, we can't bring anything to the table. So it just shows you how good of a product it is for local government, state government, whoever's installing these. I know there's even some private installers in the region too. What next for Whitsunday Council? We've still got that last section of boardwalk seen on the top right. We've got a number of those legacy items from that sort of 20-year period where timber was the thing. Top left picture shows a handrail that doesn't really form any benefit to us. So what we do there, we'll see. But Wagners Darren's been to see us, and he did a lunch and learn where we had a number of the asset owners come and sit and see what is on offer with this FRP product, and it's opened their eyes to what else we have. So bollards, shelters is a big one. You see the bottom right picture, that's a 10-12-year-old shelter that's just rusting. It's on the foreshore anywhere with salt, and particularly in Bowen, or Bowen as many know it as. You're always getting the salt spray. So the FRP being, rotten, corrosion, rust resistant, it is an ideal solution. So it's definitely something we've got in mind. We have a number of marine assets. We've got Chute Harbour. That's a location where we've got future works, whether FRP comes into it. I suppose it's really market driven. It's hard as a local government to state we want this, because we've got to be fair and non-competitive. So always looking for the right, I suppose, angle, and eliminating what you don't want is what I would recommend. for anyone who's wondering how do you push towards a product such as a FRP. Hopefully that's given you some good information about our experiences. I really can't stress highly enough how positive it has been. We often find from our coordinators, our asset inspectors, especially now we've had a bit of a split where we've got operations on the one side and we're capital delivery. There is always a bit of a battle, so they'll try and point fingers. They haven't been able to point any fingers with these assets. So yeah, it's really been a positive experience from our end, and I'm sure it's some of the rest of you can benefit from. That's the presentation done. Hand over to Ryan and see if we've got any questions to answer.
Thank you very much, Michael. Just before we go to the Q&A session, I might just jump in here so you can have a bit of a drink of water and get ready for those questions coming in. I've just shared my screen there. So I just wanted to quickly tell you about our E40 grading for Wagners FRP. The recent ATS 5880 Austroads specifications published in October 2023 references the European Code for the pultrusion properties, in which pultruded FRP materials are categorised based on their elastic modulus value. Wagners CFT is an Australian manufacturer of pultruded FRP structural profiles, which consistently achieve an E grading of E40. So the E in E40 stands for elastic modulus, which tells us how strong and stiff the FRP is. The higher the number, the stronger and stiffer. The lower the number, the weaker and more easily bent. So next time you're comparing quotes, make sure you're comparing apples to apples and check what the E grading of the FRP is, because not all FRP is created equal. I did just want to mention as well, because Michael talked about in his presentation how advantageous it is to have a trusted and skilled contractor in your region who can construct with FRP. So for those councils that are with us today, if you have got a contractor that you have a long history of working with and would love to continue working with in the future, but they don't have FRP experience, introduce them to Wagners CFT. We have got a fantastic installation partners program that we can have tailor fit to the needs of individual contractors. That can include a host of different things, including training. And I'll mention the training specifically. The training on how to construct with FRP can either be done at our Wellcamp facility in Queensland or on site of your choosing. So we've got a construction team as part of our business, and that team has travelled the world, including going to projects in Abu Dhabi and the United Kingdom. So anything and everything is possible. Just talk to us. That program might also include, Michael talked about the advantage of actually coming to our manufacturing facility in Wellcamp and physically seeing what we can do here and what we can offer. And then, support from our in-house FRP experts, because we look after FRP from the manufacture to the design to the construction. So we've got experts on our team who can look after every aspect or talk to you about every aspect. So just keep in mind our installation partners program. You can use that QR code that's on the screen there to find out more about that program, or I've just popped a link in the chat facility as well. All right, Ryan, I am going to throw over to you, introducing Wagners CFT General Manager for Australia and New Zealand again. Ryan is going to facilitate the Q&A session of the webinar. So Ryan, let's have a look at some of those questions coming through.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. Michael, I'll handle a couple of the Wagners specific ones, but to get you going, I guess, with regard to your asset managers finding minimal maintenance issues, is that unusual that you say? Like, are they often a bunch that are hard to please and capital works are delivering things that are problematic, or how does that typically work?
Yeah, I touched on that a little bit, and a part of that has, I suppose, exacerbated it a bit more is we have had a restructure about 12 months ago. So we are different teams now. There is the operational, your maintenance team, and the capital delivery team. So the framework we're using is meant to bring us all together. we have a process where they're the client to us, so they should be buying throughout. However, you have still got some of the old heads at the depots who will always try their best to make life challenging with what you're delivering. So yeah, it is unusual to have pretty much nil issues brought up with any asset. We can very easily go to some of these these old heads and say, what do you know about, this drainage outlet here that we keep getting these customer requests about? It's ongoing. It's not been fixed. This is the opposite. We don't have any future fixes. They can't just set it and forget it. I know there was the first stage of Boardwalk. We just brought in this framework, so we carried out the handover, which is our gate 4, where you bring the asset owners out and their team, walk them through it, and they're looking and pointing and prodding and going, well, what are we looking for? What are we going to have as a problem? And I'm like, well, that's kind of the point. We're getting a product that it is pretty much a set and forget. You've got to do your annual inspections or frequently, depending on what the asset is, but the asset management plan. But they have had these things now for 6+ years, and they've looked at them numerous times, and they just can't bring anything back. So it just takes off a lot of that ongoing cost that you just don't really see. If it's just an inspection, part of a regime, you have to do, nothing more. No, defect pickup. I suppose the only other one that they have every now and picked up, which is not just related to the product, it's more like the tie-in points. You might have a little bit scour, depending on what where it is. They normally have creeks, stormwater flowing around there, so it's ongoing maintenance that you'd find here and there. But it's as far as the FRP product, they've got nothing for us.
Okay, very good. You talked around the width of the boardwalk. So, and again, I can probably touch on this with a bit of my knowledge, but do you maybe just want to elaborate for us on how you were able to achieve, I think, consistent or the same foundations were reused, but you were able to achieve a wider structure? You just maybe want to touch on that design element component?
Yeah, sure. I didn't go too far into the technicalities of the project, but the best thing they did 20 years ago was install, and it must be high-grade stainless threaded rod into literal bedrock. And the contractor, as part of those works, they had to test them to ensure the pull-out capacity was still suitable. There was a few they had to replace, but I think it was 5% or so or less. So they use that to go back to the designers to get as wide as we could. We aimed for 3.5 meters. Some areas it's a little lower because you've got literally rocks poking out and you've got to work your way around them. But from what we understand, that would have been far more difficult to carry out with any other product. And the biggest part, and I'll touch on one of the other questions I can see, is about the manual handling. It allowed them to build these things just with the teams of guys. They didn't need to crane things in. It was actually put in by other tenderers about building off-site and helicoptering in, which I know has happened in some of the islands and whatnot in the Whitsundays. But where we were, it saved us a huge amount of money just in the doing, to not have to install scaffold throughout the whole stretch. The video that Kelly shared at the start just shows some scaffold where we're working on rock walls and you need a safe platform. But once we're onto a safer area, they were lifting these things in with their guys safely, I'm sure, and even using like little trolleys and golf carts and things to maneuver everything around. So it actually cuts down on some of those requirements quite significantly and gets you a better bang for your buck from the contractor.
Very good. And I think I'll have to read this next question as it comes up, but just to touch on Clayton's last question, I think it was end of life experience. I'm happy to handle that one if you'd like. So I guess FRP, so everyone in the world sort of knows at the moment with wind turbine blades specifically, the use and widespread nature of FRP is gaining a lot of momentum. So there's a lot of recycling pilots and projects. Effectively, what they need is consistent and commercial size feedstock to be able to keep them going. So we're part of pilots with the University of New South Wales and another couple on being able to recycle the product. At this stage, most of our end of asset life FRP is reused in non-structural applications. So we've got a number that have become culvert crossings and things on farmers' lands. We've got fence posts, all sorts of things like that, which are non-reliant on the structural properties. But at this point, the industry is still developing and really doesn't have the consistency of feedstock to enable commercialization of those recycling projects. I think it's George's question here. Is the product all manufactured onshore? Yes. So George, we're based in Toowoomba, and all of our pultruded sections are made here. We have a US manufacturing facility as well. So they manufacture specifically for the North American market. They're based in Texas, but everything that's sold in Australia is manufactured here in Australia.
The only other one I'd just raise on that, because I've had people ask as well about the micro mesh decking. I believe you import that in. But,
that's important.
That's one. George is a local, so he probably knows what we're talking about there with the micro mesh decking. We've got different products. Some have got more like an eco deck. So that's the one area really. Wagners, or the FRP, is the structural element when it comes to the surface on which you're walking, riding. Often that is another product, depending on what you as a council are after. So we've got the deck near the lagoon in Airlie, which is, I believe, like a recycled eco deck material. It's where restaurants and people sitting having a beer and an ice cream. Whereas our boardwalks, we've got the micro mesh decking, which is quite an industrial product, but it's actually it was quite important to go that way just because of wave attenuation. We had to consider, well, the designers had to consider, I think up to Q500 wave actions on the boardwalk. So the mesh and the openings actually assisted with getting that through. So.
Thank you very much. Another one from Clayton. What industries are tied to this product? Sort of through the second half of the question. So effectively, resin is an oil derivative at this stage. Again, we're part of a couple of pilots with the University of Southern Queensland and a couple others trying to integrate bio-resins into it. So it is an oil derivative. So it's oil and styrene are the two key indices that drive resin prices at this point. And obviously with the forecast for resin, for oil prices to increase significantly into the future, there's a lot of investment happening at the moment. And obviously with EPDs and those sorts of things becoming more important into bio-resins. The other one is glass. So we only really have two key raw ingredients, resin and glass. And glass is again, a world industry able to be imported. There's very limited. I don't think there's any manufacturer of glass in Australia in the creels that we buy. So we've got suppliers in Southeast Asia and China and India. So we source that from a variety of different things to be able to, variety of different sources. We do hold significant stockpiles ourselves. So we sort of hold typically between 3 and 6 months worth of glass. Resin, most of our resin is manufactured here in Australia. So we have a really good long-term relationship with Allnex, an Australian resin manufacturer. So we sort of work with them on raw material forecasting and those sorts of things. With glass, and I guess a testament to our procurement logistics team, even during COVID when we were months without obviously access to materials on an international stage, we didn't stop manufacturing at any point. So I guess to answer one of your questions, absolutely, we're confident it'll continue to be manufactured in a consistent way for many years to come. And they really are based to world or global indices. So not a huge amount of fluctuation in pricing, other than, as with most things during the COVID period, everything went a bit mad, but it's all sort of settled back to a bit normal now. There's a question here on the
Ryan, it might be worth mentioning as well for Clayton, Wagners, a little bit of a history about Wagners. We have been here for more than 20 years, Wagners CFT.
Yeah, so again, we started manufacturing our products in 2002. It was nowadays we produce our own machines. Everything is engineered and designed from a mechanical standpoint in Toowoomba, constructed in Toowoomba by our fabrication shop, and then installed and delivered by our CFT team. So it is all very much a local piece, and that's all around protection of IP. What we do is very different, which is why our modulars are very different to anyone else in the world. So that's sort of the key reasoning why we do be very protective with how we get these things manufactured and designed as well. Question here
I'll just add one little bit on that as well. The guys we work with locally, I've asked the questions, during some of these tender assessments in the past as why do they select Wagners? And their key part, because I know for a fact that they are at times approached with better pricing from other competitors, and they say it's simply down to the locality. Even though Toowoomba isn't local to the Whitsundays, it's nearly 1,000 kilometres away. At least it's local. It's in Queensland, and you can get products quickly. Other suppliers, not so much. That's what I've been told from the guys we work with quite a number of times. And they have used other products, other FRP products on other contracts in different locations, and they favour the Wagner stuff for that locality, and it's just down to the supply. I suppose as far as the local government's concerned, like we don't have it at this point in our assessments. You can obviously add it in, but a lot of councils are going towards that local or Australia supply. So that is a benefit for a local government of having it known as a Australia manufactured supply. It ticks some boxes if you have that set up at your council. We just don't at this point. I know it's probably a way we're going to change going forward. Same with the green properties. I mean, we don't really have much of that in our assessments, but it's the way we'll be heading.
I'll make sure that when I send up out the follow-up email this afternoon, that I include some details about Wagners' environmental product declaration as well. So Wagners does have an EPD. We've got a great webinar on the EPD as well that will explain. So for those councils or those businesses that do have environmental aspects that they need to consider, maybe you've got 2030 carbon targets. It's well worth knowing that we have an EPD so that you can actually calculate carbon savings on your project as well. So I'll include that this afternoon.
Just another one on the contractor base. Michael, I know you mentioned Stokesy and the guys from Plants obviously delivered this one and have found themselves other business opportunities working outside of their local area because of their connection or experience working with FRP, which is fantastic. But do you have any feedback from them or from any other contractors you've worked with around upskilling or tools? Did they find it hard to adapt to being able to use and build with FRP, or is it any feedback they've given you, I guess?
Yeah, sure. I mean, before I get into it, I'll actually just add in, when we've gone to market, generally it is looking at the likes of the PW landscapes who are local and able to offer that. We don't have others in the region who are able to really compete. So we have spoke to some in the past. There were some smaller companies who've installed other products probably about 6-7 years ago, and it just never really led anywhere. So it is great for PW landscapes. They have a good opportunity there, but we don't know what it's going to take to encourage others to come in and be competitive. And we're not going to put our efforts into that, but we do want to be able to see some competitive nature in what we're assessing, just so we've got some fair and reasonable to have a look at. From their point of view, and they're using this stuff pretty regularly. They seem to always have a job on building FRP structures. So they're obviously pretty happy working with them. I know a big consideration is going back to the lightweight nature. I mean, you don't have to go stressing too much about either plant or access if you can get a couple of guys or girls lifting some of these members around. It just saves a hell of a lot of hassle, especially in some of the tight constraints you're going to have like, you know, where you're building boardwalks, or you might be throwing a bridge up over a creek, you don't have a lot of access options. So yeah, the big one is that lightweight nature of it. I know they get through a lot of diamond tipped drill bits. That is one thing that they've learned is what works. You know, what to buy from Bunnings. Don't just go and buy any old drill bit. They will not last. That is a good bit of feedback. And even at the well, I believe you guys provide some recommendations of which ones to use. But yeah, there's certain ones at Bunnings that do not last. And yeah, I suppose it helps them as far as we're a very transient area. I know PW Landscapes they do have backpackers coming and working for them for a period of time. So this is one that they probably don't need to provide as much training. You know, manual handling is always a thing to consider if you're not having to lug around heavy items. You got people who might not care quite so much, might have had a few shandies on the evening before, living the life of Airlie as it might be. I'm sure that's another consideration for the contractors, just to make it easier for them to get guys integrated into the teams who are building these, just because we do have a turnover in the region. So yeah, there's a number of positives, but definitely worth putting them in touch. They're, I suppose, as we say, considered experts in delivering these things. So Wagners can probably put them in touch if anyone's needing to get any more feedback from them.
Ryan, I do have Matt Stokes online. If you wanted me to share his mic and camera.
Probably dropping him in the deep end a bit there.
I know, we're dropping him in the deep end.
Well, we'll keep going a bit more project high level to start with. Michael, just the turnaround time, I guess I can probably talk specifically to Wagner's turnaround, but just how did the procurement phasing work? How long from when you sort of let a contract did you open the first phase of the boardwalk? Was it delivered on time, on budget? We're just maybe a bit more around the turnarounds on the project from your perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the aspects there, because this was essentially a design and construct. So what other local governments would experience is the design portion of that is going to be, you know, dependent on the market and where you are. What I can see is through a few projects we've carried out, there are different designers that whoever the principal contractor has used a different designer, I suppose, depending on availability. It is it's a member, a structural member. So you provide the design tables. If someone's a structural engineer, they could probably go out and design using this material. So it's nothing different to other structures. So that time frame there is probably one of the limitations on who's available to really get you some plans to build. You'll probably touch on, but from this one, we generally try to give, I think, around 6 weeks notice. So the way we structured this, we gave 3 separable portions for the sections. With the second one, we tried to give around 6 weeks notice to be able to, for Matt to be able to go and get the product from you guys. So that's what the turnaround time was from the Wagners end at the time. And beyond that, I mean, well, they turned around 13 weeks, 350 meters of boardwalk, 3.5 meters wide, on a tricky surface. They had 2 teams working from either end on the one section. So yeah, they can turn around pretty quickly, and that's, as we touched on, due to that maneuverability and being able to throw the material around quite a bit.
Very good. Another one from George here. The boardwalk comprises of typical SHS. What other profiles are available? Again, maybe that's one best for me to answer. So we sort of work in rectangular, square, and circular hollow section is Wagner's typical profiles. The pull wound process that we use requires it to be a mandrel, which therefore means all the shapes have to be a closed section. So the circular hollow section ranges from 89 mil up to 356 mil, and the square hollow section is from 100 by 100 to 125, And then we have rectangular sections from 100 by 75 up to 250 by 100. So a variety of sections through there. Typically a boardwalk will be a 250, 100 bearer and joist, and 100 by 100 handrail with a 100 by 75 rail. So they're the typical rectangular sections that are used in a boardwalk. What do you do with the Ravi's just answered what you do with the FRP materials after end of life? I think we covered that one off a little bit earlier, but typically they're used in non-structural applications. So normally it's for farmers or culverts or fence posts, or often people turn them into little low-level retaining walls. So garden bed edges, those sorts of things or even bollards is a common application that many of the councils around the country have sort of turned their end of asset useful life, or some structures that have had cars crash into them and different things like that. They've all been able to be chopped up and used for different non-structural applications. And just on turnarounds, I guess, just to cover that one off, Kelly, I know we're running out of time, but just on turnarounds, typically we talk to a 10 to 12 week design period, and then a 3 to 4 weeks sort of supply. Depending on the complexity. In this one, we had to do wave modelling. We had to do some pretty complex hydro work to understand Q500, I think it was, storm events. If there's sort of known hydro or known geo information, typically it's hydro, geo, or survey that are the three longest lead item on the ground work that's required to then inform design to enable it to be closed out. If that information is available from the outset, we're typically looking about 6 weeks our side of the fence to get a design, and then can deliver a structure not too long after that. And again, particularly for a long boardwalk like this, stage delivery. So Stokesy and the guys could start, I think it was 6 weeks after we got the go-ahead. I'm not pretending we had every bit of material on site there at 6 weeks, but we definitely had the piles and enough bearers and joists to get them started, and it was sort of stage delivery thereafter as they needed more material. So that's a bit of a general.
The turnaround for your constructed bridges, that's probably a little longer. That's probably we're talking boardwalks, but we've done more of the boardwalks. The bridges often are coming, ready on a truck, ready to drop in. What's turnaround time typically on that?
We build them. The luxury of having a very experienced team here on site in a controlled weather environment, and undercover hard stands, all those sorts of things. We actually build, I think earlier you talked around, I think it was about a 15-metre riveted truss bridge. I think we built that in about 2.5 days. 18. So we built it in about 2.5 days. So actually building the structure doesn't take too long. It's all the design components of it. So again, we typically allow around 10 weeks for 8 to 10 weeks for design, including sort of design review time on the client side. And then we can normally punch a structure out in about a month's time, slotting it in around the different work that we have. So
we've had some of those bridges. If it's timed right, you can almost knock it in a week. If the guys are in there, they're getting their footings in, give it a bit of time to cure. The bridge is literally come on the back of a truck, depending on its size, and drop it in, bolt it down, connect up your pathways, and you're away. It can be managed quite quickly to get a bridge in that way. And like I said, we've got up to 18 metres single span. There's others around the place that have done dual spans and whatnot, so you can get a bridge in pretty swiftly.
Yeah, we've got a really good article on our website on that Scottsville Road Bridge in Collinsville as well. And Matt Stokes from PW Landscapes actually goes into quite a bit of deep detail in that article about the cost savings to his business by being able to have the bridge partially manufactured or manufactured on site here at Walcamp, and how that translates into improved turnaround times and profit for his business. So I'll make sure I add that to the follow-up email too.
We've put this boardwalk up for a IPWAQ award that's next week, so fingers crossed. And that's some of the things because if you don't know, the submissions for these things are ridiculous. But yeah, we've got all that in the background there as well. Like, you just think delivering these things as a single structure, drop it in, saves you a lot of time, but also your carbon and your fuel, and God knows, it's quite extensive. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits we're able to put in that submission. So we'll see how we go.
Great. All right, Bala, I recognise that you've just put in a question there, which I'll follow up with you offline. The answer is yes. We've gone over time, so I'm very quickly just going to share my screen with you so that we can wrap up. That concludes our presentation today. Before you go, if you'd like to share your thoughts on today's webinar, please feel free to complete the feedback form using the QR code on the screen there, or I've just popped the URL into the chat facility. Perhaps you'd like to be a guest speaker on our webinar as well. So if that's the case, you can complete that feedback form. There's a section on there that tells me that you want to be a guest speaker. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me an email, give me a call. I'd love to hear from you. Our next webinar is also our last webinar for the year. It's on the 26th of November at 10 a.m. And the topic of conversation is going to be Construct Her Future, which is a world first pilot program that is igniting the interest of young women to pursue professional careers in construction. Our guest speakers are going to be Ashley Begg and Anna Richardson from Construction Skills Queensland and Nikki Vasey from Construction Arium Australia. So if your organisation is looking to improve the representation of skilled construction workers, female construction workers, this will be a good one for you to attend. Again, you can use the QR code that's on the screen there to register, or I have popped the URL address in the chat facility for you. Okay, well, that concludes our webinar on the total cost of ownership and how you can improve your budget with FRP structures. We hope you've enjoyed yourself today and got a lot of information. We look forward to seeing you in November. We're going to go out on the video. If I can get my screen to play ball here, I'm going to have to stop sharing for a second. We're going to go out on the video that we came in on, and we'll see you in November. Thanks for coming, Michael. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.